Welcome to the Burnout Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Christian Felipe. I'm very excited for this inaugural episode of the Burnout Basketball Podcast. I hope you're all staying hot out there because I know we're staying hot down here in Miami, Florida. So just a little background on me. I'm a Miami native, born and raised here, and what that means is that I'm a lifelong Heat fan. I'd even go as far as to say Heat have given me some of the best moments of my life. We've won championships on my birthday in the past. So long, deep ties with this organization and what it means to me. As we get into this podcast, this might not be the best way to maybe start something where I want you all to listen to me. But I do want to preface this by saying that I am by no means an expert. And what I mean by that is I feel like sometimes if you listen to some discourse, whether it be on ESPN, TNT, the talking heads, or whether you're listening to podcasts and things of that nature, sometimes people can present ideas in a way that makes it seem as if they know an incredible amount more than the coaches, the GMs, the scouting staffs, the people who do this every day. And while those people are prone to mistakes, they can make mistakes. We're all human. I definitely want to be on the side where I admit that the people who do this every single day for a living, those coaches, they could forget in one day more than I will ever know. And that is completely fine. It doesn't mean that I can't analyze things. It doesn't mean that I can't look into things. But it's just something to keep in mind as we go forward and make critiques of these kind of people and maybe the decisions that they're making. There are smart people who run the league. There may be some dumb people as well. But overall, it's mostly a smart league. I'm just someone who loves this sport. I watch the sport. I enjoy the stories that come from it. I enjoy the stories that the numbers tell as well. And as someone who has always had a propensity for math, I worked as a math tutor for a while, but also as someone who works as a writer currently, it's sports and basketball in specific are kind of this perfect melting pot in where you can tell these stories while also relying on data to back up what you're talking about, if you so choose to. Sometimes the stories are interesting enough that you might not need any data to go into it. I don't want this to be too extreme of a data nitpick deep dive podcast. There's other people who do that far better than me, and I will shout them out whenever applicable. But I do want this to be a place where we talk about it at a little bit of a deeper level and try to see what's going on and what we can look towards. So, without further ado, getting into this first episode, what we're going to be talking about is the outlook for the Heat for the 25-26 season, and more specifically, things to look forward to. I will be candid and say this is the third time I record this. I recorded an episode that I was feeling pretty good about, and then wanted to kind of wait and see what would happen with this KD trade drama and whatnot, so we'll get into that a little bit at the back end. But just wanted to wait to see what players were at least still on the team as this would come out. So first and foremost, as we're talking about this season, right? I know this is going to be weird to think of as a positive, but there are no real expectations for this season, which means that's something to look forward to because in the past, if you're a Heat fan like we've had the moniker, the Cardiac Heat. Remember that? That's because of our propensity to have these games that go on to the fourth quarter that are tight, that's ugly offense, that we don't know who's going to win, and sometimes we come out, sometimes we don't, and those games are exciting. I live for them in the playoffs, but they can really be painful when it's almost every single game during the regular season. So at the end of the day, what helps is right now, this isn't a year to really be worried about the exact wins we get on paper. It's more of a year to watch for development, as long as we don't make any big trades in the next few weeks. And that might sound crazy, but it takes the pressure off when you're watching these games because win or lose, you can still take away from the game some developments. You can look at a Tyler Herro, you can look at a Bam Ware and see how they're doing individually, see how they're doing together. Are there some pick and roll combinations that they're doing that maybe they didn't do last season? Are there some 2-3 man actions maybe that they're working on that maybe we didn't see as much before that are getting better? There's just a lot of room to be able to evaluate talent and to be excited because we're kind of almost working from a ground zero. Not a zero in the sense that we have no one on the team because we still do have Bam, we still do have Tyler, we have Ware, we still have exciting players. Not maybe the flashiest players like an Anthony Edwards or a Paolo or a Cade Cunningham where they're really, a force of nature working their way to the will and, is above those other two. But that we don't have that per se, but we still have one of the best defensive players in the league. We still have a great shot maker in Tyler Herro. We have a young prospect in Ware and Jovic. So there are things to be looking forward to without the worry of, is this a championship season? What are we going to do in the playoffs? Are we wasting another year? Jimmy's prime? Jimmy's gone. For better or worse, this isn't a pod about that, but he's out of here. We don't have to worry about that stress. And we could just think about who we have on the team, whether we want to keep them on the team, whether we want to make some trades. And then also, hopefully, this is another weird plus and minus thing for us going into it, but maybe since we don't have as big of a star to draw people to the stadium, maybe some ticket prices will go down a bit and us Heat fans can actually be able to go at a more reasonable rate. And just to touch on that for a moment, this is not the topic of this pod, but just want to defend us Miamians for a little bit here. You might see a lot of comments online about Heat fans always being late to the arena, the Heat fans are the worst fans, etc. You know, these things. And while I do want to say that maybe Hispanics, me being one included, might have a propensity for being late, whatever, the point is, our stadium is located on the water. What does that mean? That means you can't come from one direction. You can only come from the other three directions, northwest, south, right? It's on the east coast. Another issue, it's located on the water in the downtown area where, in general, if you're a stranger to Miami traffic and how downtown systems work, the majority of people work over there in the east near the arena or in the general area of the arena. Those people get off work at 5:30, 6, whatever the case may be. They then sit in rush hour traffic. We don't have public transportation that's reliable here. They sit in rush hour traffic to get home. I myself, when I used to work pretty near the Heat Arena, it would take me an hour to get home. And it was, I want to say, only a 5-mile drive. So get off work 5:30, get home 6:30. Game starts at 7:30, right? Well, you got to get home. You have to, let's not even assume you have kids or anything of that nature, because I don't, but you got to shower, you got to get dressed. You probably want to eat because the food is prohibitively expensive there. Then you need to get in your car and then drive back east towards where you just came from, sit in more traffic, fight for parking, all that to say, even after you get home, it's at the very least, a 30-minute drive, and that's if you live pretty close. Most people, it's more of another 45-minute to an hour drive. So you get home at 6:30, a 1-hour drive, boom, that's 7:30. That doesn't count looking for parking. That doesn't count the lines getting into the arena. Just give us some grace. There's a reason. We have poor structure here in Miami. We don't have the greatest public transportation, and it is hard for Heat fans to get to the arena on time, regardless of whether or not we enjoy being late. And that doesn't even go into mention that the people who live closest to the arena, for the most part, are out-of-towners. A lot of transplants from New York, a lot of transplants from the Caribbean, from Latin America, people who are living in those high-rises in Brickell and downtown, us regular folk, us working-class citizens, we're living out further west, further south, further north, and we're sitting in traffic. So give us some freaking grace. Sorry for that diatribe. We're going to get into the real stuff now. My first topic that I thought we had to jump into as we're thinking about this upcoming season, something to be looking forward to, is Tyler Herro. Will he be our hero? See, that's a play on words there, because his name is Herro, right? Of course. But the question is, can he evolve into the hero we're wanting him to be, or will he even be on the team? For as long as he's been here, he's been in trade rumors. I can only imagine the stress that puts on him, but for better or worse, we've always been kind of looking to see if he's someone we should be upgrading off of or someone that we should be waiting to see how they develop. So as I was looking at Tyler Herro's season, I did a little bit of a deep dive. Well, maybe not a full deep dive just yet. It was like a medium dive. I took a little swim in the Tyler Herro waters. We will be doing deep dives later on, going through individual players and talking a little bit more about some of their specific stats. But for now, just from that little swim I took, we're looking at how Tyler Herro continued to develop as a primary option for the Miami Heat. This was his healthiest season after being called fragile by Pat Riley at the end of last season. He played 77 games. That was the most he's ever played, and he averaged, just looking at those base stats, 23.9, 5.2 rebounds, and 5.5 assists, and he's 25 years old. So those stats are not bad for a 25-year-old. Also, most people would agree that 27 years old is when people enter their prime. Of course, that's a fluid number, but that's to say he is not peaked. There's no reason to assume he's peaked. He can continue to develop as he did this year. And what we can see from this year. This was his highest usage rate since the 21-22 season. That's when we lost in Game 7, cardiac heat, to the Celtics, where Tyler Herro didn't even play. So that was one of his highest usage rate seasons, and he didn't get to play in the playoffs due to injury. Now, he obviously did get to play for the majority of the whole season. When looking at what that meant with his usage rate, what did that affect? Did he play better? Did that mean that some of his stats actually got worse? Well, actually, when we look at points per 100 shots attempted, I know, interesting there, but that's a PSA. That means for every 100 shots he took, how many points could you expect, right? His highest ever was this season. So his usage rates went up and he was scoring at a better rate. That's good. He was in the 90th percentile in his position. That's great, right? So when you're looking to move off of Tyler, and I'm not arguing for or against that here, that'll be a different discussion, but you have to keep in mind that when you're looking to move off of him, if you're making those comments, who are you moving off of him for? What age are they? What timeline are they on? And where do they really land on these statistics? What type of player are you getting? And are they marginally better or are they a good deal better? And of course, offense has never really been the worst part of Tyler Herro's game. It's more of a defense thing, but a lot of smaller guards aren't the best at defense. You usually have to build a team around them, and that's obviously Shea winning the MVP, winning Finals MVP. That's an anomaly with those steals, with those blocks, with the way that he puts pressure, even when he's not the on-ball defender. You can't expect that from every player. That's he is an MVP for a reason. But Tyler Herro is a pretty good combo guard that we have playing for us right now, and he's shown throughout this season that he can score at a pretty high clip. So when you're looking at his percentiles throughout the season, right? From 2, he shot 56.6% on the season. That's his highest ever at the 94th percentile. And that's interesting to note because a big thing going into the season that you can see if you watch the games and you can even see from the numbers, he stepped away from that deep mid-ranger and kind of pushed those back to three-point shots. And then he still had some of those middies, still had a couple of those deep middies, but he made sure that those deep mid-rangers, those low percentage shots, were moved away to the 3. So when you're taking those, you're at least getting that extra point. And when you're taking middies, you're a little bit closer to the rim. And by doing that, by shooting 37.8% from 3, 64 percentile for his position, not the best, not the worst, you're realizing that players are having to guard him a little bit differently. And that's what's opening up his drives, what's opening up his mid-range game in a better way, because he's shooting so well from 3 that they have to guard him a little bit more out there. They have to guard him a little bit closer. So with that being said, when you're looking at that 3 percentage, I know it's not the most exciting thing, but you also do have to keep into account that he is now the primary, or was now the primary hub of our offense in terms of scoring. Bam obviously is a facilitator in a large way for us. But when you're thinking about who's going to shoot the shots for us, it's Tyler Herro. So he had more defensive pressure on him than maybe he was used to in the past. It was a learning season. It was a growth season for him. Some interesting stuff, too, when you're looking at his percentiles from 3 was Tyler Herro as good as he was at the beginning of the season, or was he more indicative of his performance at the end of the season, right? When you're looking at that early on, what made him an all-star, his first all-star ever, he shot 43% in October, 40.8% in November, 40.5% in December, and then at the new year, when we started seeing a little bit of that slump, 38.3% in January, not the worst. But then as we get into February, a terrible 25.9%. That's a stark decrease in what we did there. And then 36.7% back in March, but he was taking 3.7 less a game. So he was shooting way less, got his numbers a little bit back up, but still worse than those early season numbers. And then finally in April, still not shooting a ton of them, only shooting 5.4, and he was at 44.4%. So he got the percentage back up, but shooting less. And that is to say, if you watch this team, we didn't have a lot of floor spacers, and when we did, they weren't people necessarily that were being guarded to the same extent as Tyler. Really, if you're thinking just off the top of your head, who's the next three-point threat on this team? Duncan Robinson? Sure, great, he's good. But the issue is we don't play a lot of times with Tyler and Duncan on the floor, and we do sometimes, but when we do, our team usually plays like poop because neither of them are the greatest defenders, so you have two traffic cones out there on the perimeter, and that makes it a little bit harder for us. You're also not worried with Duncan creating off the dribble as much, so you get to guard him a little bit differently than you would. You know that he's going to need to really catch and shoot or get that handoff from Bam. So those actions are a little bit more predictable when it comes to Duncan's play. So all that to say that Tyler was attracting a little bit more of the defense's attention. And that is partly due to, even at the beginning of the season when we had that Jimmy Butler drama, which, again, a thing to be hopeful for. We don't have any more of that drama. But even though Jimmy was actively tanking while on the court, opposing players weren't necessarily aware of how actively he was tanking. So he was still drawing defenders. He was still someone that you had to pay attention to some extent, which freed up Tyler a bit. But once Jimmy was gone and defenses started catching on to the way the Heat was running an offense, now Tyler's receiving pressure that he never had to receive before. Because they know if Tyler's not going to score, no one else is on the team for the most part, right? And that's an issue. But all that to say, if he can shoot anywhere near what he was shooting at the beginning of the season, if you have another offensive threat next to him to be able to help space the floor, to be able to help attract some of those defenders, to give him a little bit of an easier pass out, or to have someone who can pass it to him and give him some of those easier shots, maybe you can expect for those numbers. Maybe not 43%, but maybe he can float in that 40% range from three like we were seeing for such a prolonged stretch. And if he does, that's incredibly exciting for what that can do for our offense. So the things that we're hoping for, right, as we're looking at Tyler Herro going into the season, things that I'm going to be watching for, win or lose, is his assist to usage, right? That's another thing that's been kind of meh for him. He's played sometime at point guard, sometime at shooting guard. Right now, it's kind of a question mark of which one he's better at. We're going to be talking about that more later on. But for his assist to usage, it's a measly 41 percentile at his position. So he's more towards the bottom when it comes to actually getting assist for as much as he has the ball in his hands. But again, that's also because we don't really have great people for him to pass it out to. His turnover rate is average 62 percentile, so you want to clean that up. Those are easy things to clean up that you can assume will get better. And again, just ultimately, I think one of the most important things is, can his 3 percentage stay closer to that 40 rather than that 35 or even that paltry 25 in February? You'd imagine that was just a blip from being tired. But again, I'm excited to see Tyler this year. I'm looking forward to what we can do with him. His contract is not prohibitive. We have him under contract for 2 more years. His extension is another conversation that could be coming up, but even then it's not as prohibitive as people might think, and we'll talk about that again when we do a Tyler Herro deep dive. But if I'm a Heat fan, I'm looking forward to 1 more year of Tyler Herro to see how he does, and to see, regardless of if it's for keeping him and building a team again around him and Bam, or if it's for him to continue to increase his value on the market, because players who can shoot 40% from 3 are pretty good, and teams like those players typically, right? Moving on, the next segment that I'm excited for, the next thing that we're looking forward to, is the Bam Ware Combo. And as you think about this, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds is, can Ware be that stretch 5 we play next to Bam? That's a good question. Well, the issue is, you look at the numbers, Ware shot 31.5% in the season, and that is not great. That is the second lowest behind Zach Collins among players in their rookie season who shot at least 31% in at least 2.5 attempts per 36 minutes. So all that to say, pretty much players who shot the ball at least 2 times that were playing at the 5, what did they do, right? And Ware was one of the worst when it comes to that. Again, though, I mean, his shot didn't look bad as you were watching it. You definitely felt like he could be a good shooter. And as I went through that list of players just to see in their first year if there was anyone similar to him and if they've improved, right? Just to maybe project his path forward. And none of this is to say it's linear. Players progress at different rates. He could be an anomaly for the good or bad. But going some notable names that I saw, Wemby only shot 32.5% in his rookie year, and he's still being given the green light to shoot the heck out of that thing. Nas Reed only shot 33% his rookie season, and most recently he was shooting 37%. Before that, 41%, so that's a big uptick. Olynyk, remember him? Yeah, big old maple expletive playing for the Heat. Well, he only shot 35% in his rookie season. Better than Ware, of course, but he got up to the 40s. Mo Wagner shot 28%, and he got up to 36 on limited attempts. But we're not needing Ware to be a Karl Anthony Towns. We don't need him to shoot 7 shots from 3 a game. We just need him to be a threat. If he can get to a 35%, and anything above that would be tremendous. But if he's at least someone you have to guard from 3, that spaces the floor for us in a way that we haven't really had in a while with someone who could play a lot of minutes. Kevin Love can obviously hit the 3, but he's older and we've had him for a long time at an older age. So you're looking for a young player who can grow next to Bam, who can hopefully hit that. But then the other question is, if you're like me, if you were watching the Olympics, right, and you're hearing Coach Spo talk about unleashing Bam from three, you were waiting for it, you were expecting it, you were excited for it going into this season, and what actually happened? Well, he didn't really shoot him that much. So we don't know. What we can say is pre-All-Star break, he shot 29.9% on 2.6 attempts. Not great. That is not good. You don't want that guy shooting threes. But there's a different guy. Bam post All-Star break. He shot 44.8% on 3.2 attempts. So what does that mean? That's a slight uptick in attempts, 0.6, so, half a shot more a game. Not in a crazy uptick, but it is more attempts. And then the dramatic increase in actual percentage made, 44.8 as opposed to 29.9. I don't expect Bam to be an above 40% three-point shooter. I mean, if that becomes true, then watch out, league. But again, same as Ware, if he can be at that 35, 36, 37% kind of range where you have to actually guard him from three, where he is actually a threat to make a shot from three, then, well, that opens up the floor for us. That opens up the way that we can play the ball. That opens up driving lanes as well, which helps with players who are better at cutting to the basket. It's just, I don't need to go on and tell you how great it is to be able to have a 5-out offense, as long as you're able to vary that up as well. It's interesting to note, too, that if you remember, pre-All-Star break, we weren't really playing Ware all that much, and post-All-Star break, we were. So, I wanted to look at, what did that Bam Ware lineup actually do last year? How did it perform, right? What did that compare to others? So, in total, according to Cleaning the Glass, shout out to them, there's 1,088 possessions where Bam and Ware were on the floor together, and they were a plus 4.2 net rating with them two together. That's a 74 percentile net rating across two-man lineups, and that's not bad, especially considering that one of those players is a rookie. One of those players was just learning how to play on this team, as well as Bam learning how to play next to that player. Our offense, we scored 114.6 points per 100 possessions, and we allowed 110.4 points per 100 possessions. That's what gives you the net rating. But that all to say is that gives us an 84 percentile on defense. So the offense can get better. I'd imagine it'll get better as Ware continues to improve, as Bam maybe continues to shoot better from three. But that was a pretty good freaking defense, and one of the biggest things that you actually worry about when it comes to rookies is their defense, and Ware was able to hold up. There were times where maybe he was a little bit lost. There was that very rude John Morant comment about calling him a pigeon. I don't think he's a pigeon. Let's not get there. But talk your shit. I love when players do that, so that's all cool for me. I don't mind it. But the point is, he was pretty good on defense when sharing the floor with Bam. And if we can go from what was once a very small lineup to this double big lineup, that's going to be pretty exciting. One of the biggest question marks with Ware coming into this season as a rookie was his motor. There was no question about his talent in college. It was more so, is he driven enough to play? Is he driven enough to improve? And I'd say he landed in the perfect place if that's your concern. We will find that out very quickly. And I think he's with the right people in the right organization to make sure that he does have that motor. Some other stats, just looking at their lineup together. They had a 91% effective field goal rate. Not bad. We were disappointing when it came to turnovers, offensive rebounds, and free throws. So that's easily fixable stuff, you'd hope. The turnovers especially, and the free throws especially, you could work on those things. But on the bright side, we barely allowed any offensive rebounds when those two shared the court. Makes sense. Two pretty big bigs who are good at defense. And we barely fouled, leading to free throws. We were in the 99 percentile when it came to that. So we play pretty clean D with both of them on the floor. That's wonderful, because free throws are free points, right? People make their free throws. You can lose the game because of an 8-point margin, and someone, if they had 16 free throws, you had 10, and they made 14 of them and you made 8, well, there goes the game, right? Because they just beat you on that. Obviously, you can't break things down that simply, but it does make a big difference when you're able to guard well without giving the opponents easy free throws, without worrying about getting into foul trouble either, because then you have to really extend that bench and bring in players maybe that you wouldn't want to bring for as long of the minutes. That's an issue you see sometimes with JJJ on the Memphis Grizzlies. He's a great defender, but he can get himself in foul trouble. This isn't a poop on JJJ podcast, but just wanted to bring that to attention. And then also just looking at Bam's specific numbers when he's sharing the court with Ware, All of them, all of his offensive numbers, all of the percents are better significantly when Ware is on the court, according to Cleaning the Glass. So just looking at his effective field goal rate, he's at 53.4 when Ware is off the court. He's at 57.8 when he's on. Again, basketball is a game of numbers. It's a game of runs. That 4.4% difference in percentage makes a big difference in the aggregate when you're playing, again, these long drawn out seasons with tons of possessions. So you're hoping that can continue to grow and they can continue to thrive together, especially considering that Bam is only just about to turn 28, Herro is 25, and Ware is 21. So it's a young team. We're kind of keeping it young, and it's exciting to me to be able to see that two-man lineup of Bam and Ware, but also just in general the three-man lineup of Bam, Ware, and Herro, and see what it can do. And that's not even to get into Jovic yet, which we will get into. And we'll be doing, again, a deep dive on Bam, a deep dive on Ware, maybe a deep dive on the combo itself later on all these players, really. These next ones we'll kind of skim through a little bit faster as they're not maybe the hardest hitting names. This one I don't want to draw in too hard, but at the trade deadline, we got Davion Mitchell. At the trade deadline, we stopped playing Terry Rozier as much. Terry seems like a great guy. He seems like a good locker room presence. Whenever we've gotten into scuffles throughout the season, it seemed like he was pretty quick to want to back up our players. So shout out to him for that. I don't know what happened to him with that neck injury last season, and don't even want to get into the legal issues that he's facing. But ever since that neck issue, he has not been the same player for us, and he's been by far one of the worst players on our team. He's a minus 8.3 net rating for us. That's 21 less wins expected just by playing him. 21 less wins. That's not good. When you're playing someone a ton of minutes, someone you traded a first round pick for, and they're tanking you that hard, it looked really bad. The only player that was worse with significant minutes was Jaquez, sadly. And Jaquez is a young player who hopefully was just having a slump, but them two being on the court was really bad for us. So just something to look forward to is Terry Rozier being on the court less, and Jaquez either being on the court less or maybe bouncing back to what he was before. Terry's also now on an expiring contract, so you can imagine we might be looking to get him into a trade just as a salary filler. And that's $26.6 million that's coming off of our books. That's 17.2% of our cap that was going to Terry Rozier. So that's tough. That's tough when you're evaluating this team. That's like looking at the Sixers, and if they suck this season and you forget to mention that they have a max slot going to someone who's not playing, well, that's huge. You would replace that salary normally with a productive player, someone who's worth that salary. Not that Terry Rozier is as expensive or as injured as Embiid, but when you have a big chunk of your salary going to a player who is a negative, it makes a big difference on your team. But this isn't about Terry. This is about Davion Mitchell and how he looks next to Tyler and how he looks with the Heat. I've loved every single thing I've heard from him. He's gone above and beyond talking about how he wants to be on this team, even after, despite the terrible, embarrassing loss we faced to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs, which was utterly embarrassing. It made me want to blow up the whole team, but let cooler heads prevail. Am I right? Davion was a plus 6.9 for us on the court net rating. The only other player with significant minutes that was higher than him was Alex Burks, surprisingly. But even more surprising, or something to consider, is that Davion was here only for a portion of the season, so that sample size is a bit different. That number goes even higher when he's sharing the court with Herro. He's a plus 7.4 net rating sharing the court with Herro. That's an 8.85 percentile duo right there between those two who were just getting clicking. The biggest concerns with him on the court are the free throw rate and our offensive rebounds, which seems to be just an overlying concern, probably the way we play, getting back on defense rather than hustling for offensive rebounds. We also allowed a decent effective field goal rate from opponents with them too, but somehow still managed to hold them to low points per possession, and that was thanks to high turnovers and very little fouling. So again, what that means is while teams were able to shoot it well when they did get an opportunity to shoot against this lineup, when Tyler and Mitchell were on the court together, we caused a lot of opponent turnovers, and we fouled not very often, which means not a lot of free points for them, a lot of easy buckets for us on the other end when you're able to score off of turnovers. There's limited possessions on this, but just wanted to look at him sharing the court with Bam Ware and Herro. That had us at a 97 percentile effective field goal rate. That's pretty great. That means they're getting good shots when they're on the court together, but the defense went down and players shot really well against this lineup. So got to look at how we could fix that going forward. We didn't foul, and we did completely limit offensive rebounds, which was good. And then just the person who was with them the most when it comes to that four-man lineup, the fifth player who's most often in that was Wiggs, who may or may not be on the team. People who know me know that I have a very soft spot for Andrew Wiggins. Love that guy. Would love to see him on the team and love to see him have a bounce back season. But he might be in trade fodder this year, so we will see. But overall, stuff to look forward to. Just something to keep in mind too. As much as I am excited to see Davion Mitchell with another year on this team, you do have to remember that he is 26 years old. People like to think of him as a little bit younger. Maybe like if he was 22, 23 or something. I don't know what image people have of him in his mind. But that is to say, he is not necessarily a young prospect anymore. He can still get better. Again, like we mentioned with Tyler, your prime usually is around 27, and players continue to get better throughout their prime. And some players get better even in their late 30s. But Davion Mitchell might be who he is, might have room for improvement, but not some drastic or Jurassic. I'm messing up my words here. Watching too much Jurassic Park recently. But not a huge drastic change from maybe what you'd see from like a second year to the third year players jump. So all that to say, I am excited, but tempered my expectations with Davion Mitchell. Quickly, we'll go over this. Just some other players on the roster that I'm thinking about that I'm looking forward to. Jovic, Jaquez, Larson, right? Jovic, he improved last season. His durability is what we're hoping that can continue to improve because he obviously missed a lot of time. But my hope and my goal is if we can have Jovic, Ware, and Bam sharing the court at some point, or maybe one of them is just a backup for the other. But if all three of them can be on the court, that is a huge lineup with Jovic at 6'11", with Ware I think at 7'1". Bam is also I think about 6'10", even though he plays bigger than he is. And Jovic is only 22 years old. He's shown a lot of promising signs of being a decent shooter and defender. He's even shown some signs of being a pretty good playmaker. He has a great assist to usage ratio. Not that his usage ratio was that high this season, but still, it goes to show that he could be another facilitator on this offense. When you have more players who can put the ball on the court, put the ball down, dribble, and make passes, make smart reads, Bam, Tyler, Jovic, if all three of those guys are able to make plays together while also two of them playing decent D, that's pretty good for us if we can play them together. For this season, his game score is only slightly lower than the average for his position, and that's again to say that he had a very rough start to the season with injuries. And his effective field goal is slightly above the average at his position. So at 22 years of age, he's playing pretty well compared to other players at his position, and he had injury, and he had the drama with, I'm imagining, I'm not in the locker rooms, but him and Jimmy had a pretty close relationship. Jimmy was like a mentor to him. So that drama obviously affects how you play. It would affect how anyone would do anything. If someone in your workplace is stirring up commotion and drama every single day and actively working to make your team or your, company worse, right? So Jovic, I'm still very excited. I am glad that we did not include him in trade talks. I want to see him continue to improve. And if we do trade him later, at least it'll be maybe off of a full season of him playing well and not off of a season where he was injured and people can maybe talk us into less than what he might be worth. Another player we're looking at in their development is Jaquez. It was just a terrible year for him. He shot much worse. He drew less fouls. He wasn't very good on defense. So the question is, can he bounce back? I don't want to go too deep onto it. I would love to have someone like him on the team. He kind of had like that mini Jimmy game when he was in his rookie season. He had a lot of those same moves. He'll never be as good as Jimmy. At least I don't think so. He's an older rookie. But if he can just get halfway back to what he was doing before, I think it could be pretty nice for us. And of course, there's a soft spot for him just being Latino, being in Miami, and him being Latino as well. Having a player who speaks Spanish in Miami just feels perfect. So I would love to be able to keep Jaquez on the team. I also totally understand if we include him in trade fodder. Larson, he's a question. I don't want to go too deep onto that, and I didn't go too deep onto that. People hope that he's like this diamond in the rough. I wonder, is this another like KZ Okpala situation? For those of you who remember we were calling KZ like a baby Giannis, and that turned out to very much not be true. So what really is Larson? He's not a little kid. He's 24 years old. So again, still doesn't mean that he won't improve, but you're not looking at the same improvements that you would look at from someone as young as like a 19 or 20-year-old rookie. He does look pretty good when he's out there, when I get excited seeing him play, but he doesn't shoot very well. He's decent at getting steals. He's pretty good at keeping like handle of the ball. He doesn't cause a lot of turnovers. So we'll see if he can get his shot a little bit better and play a little bit better in this offense. I would hope so. Um, Wiggins, last but not least, we're not going to go too much into that, but kind of just hoping to see him a little bit more comfortable in the offense, an idealized form of Wiggins, that type of Wiggins who was the second best player on a championship team with Golden State, which I called. I have Instagram DMs to prove that I called that would happen. Just want to say, but if he can kind of get back to that in an offense in which the floor is spaced, in which he has more room to cut and to be aggressive, to be an athletic freak of nature, in which he is, to not miss games, because for the most part he doesn't miss games. The only time in his career where he has missed was when he was going through some off the court issues that caused him to miss that time. But with that gone, you'd hope that he's an Iron Man on the court, and the best ability is availability. So if he's on the court for us, if he's able to play in that five-man lineup, but be able to be that small forward who can cut to the basket, who can still shoot from three, who can have a mid-range game, a little bit more of a dynamic scorer, who can create his own shot, while also being a pretty decent defender at his size. If all those things, if the idealized version of Wiggins is realized, and when I say idealized, I'm not talking about the Maple Jordan we once hoped for, or fans once hoped for, but just a very good, solid player at the three. I think it could be exciting for us on the team, but more than likely it seems like he will be used in a trade. So I don't want to get too excited or dive too deep into what he is. Again, we also have Drew Smith and Highsmith on the team. Just want to see if Drew Smith can come back from his tragic injury. He just has the worst luck from having his foot go through the court one year to now this year. Really hoping, I'm really rooting for the guy because he's looked good in the limited minutes that we've seen him. And Highsmith, again, he's not that young. He's 28. This is last year on his contract. He might be included in trade fodder as well. But he's been a good player for us. There's been times where we've called him Locksmith. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's going to make any defensive teams, but he's been pretty good for us throughout the time that he's been here, and I like him as a player, so I'm interested to see what he does for his last year if we do not trade him. Before we close out, talking about those trades, just want to mention that going forward, right, before I get into the KD trade quickly, we have 5 firsts, 6 including this year's from Golden State, which is that 20th pick in this year's draft. We have our own 2026 first round pick, so again, if we're not that good this season, we will be able to have our own draft pick, but all things considered, it's a very weak East, especially considering Tyrese Halliburton's injury, considering where the Bucks are, considering where the Sixers are, considering where the Celtics are. It's a heavily injured East that was already a weak East, so there's going to be a lot of room for bad teams to be good or look good, so I doubt that we're going to be in the lottery by any means. We are more than likely going to be a playoff team. We were a 10th seed we were an 8th seed last year. We won 37 games, lost 45. We had the most blown games with 10-point leads or double-digit leads. So we cleaned that up. We get rid of the drama that was at the beginning of the season. There's no reason to think that we're not going to be a top 6 team in the East when you're looking at those top teams that are above us. The Celtics, the Pacers, and the Bucks, all are going to be worse. Sure, the Cavs might be a little bit better. The Knicks, who knows if the Knicks are going to be better or worse? They're still in coaching drama. It's a little bit hard for them. But the Cavs might be better. The Pistons are probably going to be better. The Magic will likely be better, especially with more health on their side and that Desmond Bane trade. The Hawks might even be a little bit better, but there's no reason to think that we won't be at least a 500 team, and 500 gets us at the 7th seed at the very least from last year's standings. But we have our own 2026 first round, we have second rounders in 2026 and 27, and we have our own pick from 2028 to 2031. And why am I listing all this? It means that as we continue to hold off on making some of these trades around the edges, we continue to kind of load our treasure chest up to be able to make a big move if needed, right? If Giannis or whoever becomes available. Not that I think we probably wouldn't have the best deal for Giannis. You'd have to get some luck with him requesting to be here. But, man, you know what? I'm going to jump into the next segment because it ties right into this and why I'm talking about trades and why I'm talking about assets and why I'm feeling so burnt out when I get to this part. And that's what I'm going to end on. Something that burnt me out this week, and it's the overwhelming negative discourse around the league all the time. And there's a lot of people who cover the league positively. There's a lot of positive sentiment around the league. This Game 7 of the finals actually ended up being one of the most watched finals games in, I think, 6 years. But even then, throughout all that, you still see so much negativity. You see people complaining about the MVP, about Shea, saying it should have gone to Jokic, whatever the case may be, but you don't got to tear one guy down to lift up the other. People complaining about the foul baiting, about the way that the Thunder play, and they're this cursed team, but it's also on the opposite hand. They were complaining the team shot too many threes and didn't play enough defense, and now you get a team that wins on defense and that barely shoots threes, and you're still complaining, and it's just so sickening. And that goes to us Heat fans too, because I'm seeing a lot of it, a lot of people complaining that we didn't put enough in that offer for KD. And let's be clear, what was made apparent and what needs to be looked at when you're looking at what Shams reported, right? We didn't include everything. We didn't include Ware. That was 100% sure. And what it seems like is if we were going to include Jovic, or if we were going to include any of those other things, we weren't going to also include multiple first-round picks. And if we were going to include multiple first-round picks, well, then you weren't going to get our young players, right? And that's fine to me. I wouldn't want to have given up Jovic, Jaquez, Wiggins, and 2 firsts for KD, because when you give up those players and you put KD on that roster now, do you fans really think we are 1 KD away from a championship? And KD is 37 years old. It's the same issue that we had with Jimmy, where we didn't want to pay him the money because of his age, which I understood. You know, there's arguments on both sides of that. But even if KD is still good for another 2 or 3 years, if you're trading for him, you need to be ready to win right now, and we are not. We're not ready to win right now. It's apparent. You know, even in this weak East, maybe you make a finals run with KD, Bam, and Herro and figuring out the rest, right? Maybe you do, but I don't think we beat what's in the West. You just saw, if you watched the finals, 2 very young teams playing so fast, so hard. It is way more difficult for older players to be able to compete in those kind of games than ever before. And when you don't have someone who's being able to relieve KD of those minutes because we traded our depth for him, then you're screwed having this older player having to overexert himself on both sides of the court. It's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if we would have gotten him and overtraded a bunch of stuff, people would have complained. Maybe not right at that moment, but the moment that it seemed like we weren't going to make the finals, people would have been complaining about how washed our front office is. But then we don't do the trade, and people again are complaining about how washed our front office is. I am totally fine that we didn't make it. I am open to trades, but I'm more open to the idea of getting someone a little bit younger who fits the current timeline we're on. We don't need to get back on that 37-year-old's timeline. You know, it's where we have a young team. Wow, sorry about that. That's what burnt me out this week, just reading all of that stuff and seeing all of that stuff. I'm still excited about this team. I'm still excited about this league and this season coming up. I'm excited about the offseason, excited about the trades, excited to see if we use our draft pick and who we draft with it. But we will see. We will stay tuned. We will find out, and we will be back. I am assuming our next episode, after you hear this, will be a deep breakdown on Tyler Herro and his season, maybe incorporating some other stuff in there as well. But he's top of mind for me as we're going into the following season. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this. I thank you for listening. I hope that you're excited to be here with me on this journey. I fully expect this to be a small group of people who are listening for a long while, and if it can grow, then wonderful. If not, then we just get to talk ball together, and it'll be a great time anyways. With that being said, I'm out. See y'all. Have a great week. Bye-bye.